Okay, here we go. So, welcome to today's lecture. As I mentioned, we will implement a web-based game. And specifically, the game is called the Monty Hall problem, or the Monty Hall game. The idea of the game was first published in 1990, so it's a relatively new game. And it's very simple. It takes place in a TV show, and there's a moderator who moderates the entire show, and there are 3 doors, and the participant has the chance to win a car. And the way the game works is that the participant chooses one door. So behind one of the 3 doors is the car that the participant can win. So the participant comes to the stage, picks one door, and then the moderator steps in and say, well, you've chosen this door, but I will make your choice a bit simpler. I will open one door for you. And so then the moderator goes ahead, opens one door, and behind that door is, of course, no car. And so now the participant has either the choice to stick to his original choice, or he's been given the chance to change his mind and choose another door. And after the participant has done his final choice, then the door will be opened. And if behind that door is a car, then then he can keep the car. So this is the Monty Hall problem. And the interesting aspect of this is, what is the optimal winning strategy? Should you, as the participant, should you stick to the original door that you've chosen at the very beginning? Or is it maybe better to change your mind after the moderator has opened the door? Or does it maybe not matter at all? So I thought before we start this, we can play the game a few times and collect some statistics. And then we will implement it. We will implement a version of it, and then we will play it again using the web implementation to collect some statistics. So I will play the moderator, and I was hoping that some of you would be interested to play the game, and I will write the results in here. So essentially, we will have 2 columns here. Here's the strategy. We have 2 strategies: either stick to original door and then change your mind. This is the strategy. And then we also have either success. This is in this direction. So either you win with that strategy or you lose. And then we will count the numbers here so that we have a bit of an overview. Like this. Okay, so I hope you can see this. I prepared 3 doors here, 1, 2, and 3. I will take one of them randomly, and this will indicate the winning door. And then we will play the game, and I will reveal so that you can see that I'm not cheating. Okay, I will pick the first door here. We'll hold it up here, upside down, so that you can't see it. Okay, who would like to play? Maybe Min, do you want to start? Min?
Yeah, I'll change my mind.
Okay, so but first you need to choose the door. Which of the 3 doors would you like to? Sorry? Which door number?
1.
1, okay. So then I open door number 2. You take 3. Can you see that? You should have kept 1 because the.
Yeah.
Okay, so you changed your mind and you lost. So let's write this down. Okay, anyone else who wants to play? I pick one more door. Yes, the door. Anyone? You can also write in the chat if you want to. So, okay, there's someone who, someone picks the door number 2, okay? I will open door number 1. Would you like to change your mind or keep door number 2? You want to keep it? Okay, the winning door was door number 3. So unfortunately you lost. So, okay, this takes quite some time, but let's play one more. There we go. Okay, there's the next door. Who wants to play? Okay, we start with Kian. So you chose door number 1. I will open door number 3. What do you want to do? You want to change, so you go to number 2 and you have won a car. Congratulations. So you changed your mind and you win. Okay, so I'm not sure if this is so representative yet, since we only have 3 data points. But the idea now, I hope you all got the idea behind the game. And our task in today's lecture is that we will implement this game using our Flask knowledge. So I hope you can see this setup. Essentially, on the right screen, we have the browser. Here we will test out our implementation. And on the left side of the screen, we have the editor. And we will start with a very simple implementation of the game. And then we will increase complexity as we go along. And on the bottom right, we have the server running. So we can always see which kind of requests are coming in from the server. So here I'm simply running the Flask server. So the very initial, so now when you look at the code on the left, our first implementation consists of a simple Flask web server. So I import the Flask module in the Flask class. I create our app as usual. And then I define a single resource, web resource, that listens to the URL /. I call it, I call the associated function simply root. Remember that the function name doesn't matter really, but typically it's a smart idea to choose something that is descriptive to the route that you're targeting. And for now, I don't use any templates yet. I simply return a string that contains some HTML code. So by now you should be a bit familiar with HTML. So I define a header with a welcome message. And then I define also a link. And that link is defined to the A tag. And I use this link will point to the /select resource. That's it for now. So now I started the server here on the bottom, and you can see the URL where the server is listening to. So this 127.0.0.1:5000. So it's on the 5000 port. So I copy this link and I paste it into my web browser and I launch the game. And we see the header message that we defined, and we also have the link. On the bottom of the browser, you can see that it points to /select, and I can try and click on the link, but of course I haven't implemented this /select resource yet. So this, this just returns a not found error. So the idea behind this select resource now is that it should give us the option to choose our first door of the player. So let's implement that. So here comes our second slightly improved version of our game implementation. The original root route is exactly the same. Nothing has changed here. And the only change that really happened is that I define a second route that now targets the /select resource. Here I use a template to return the underlying HTML because it will be a bit longer. So let's look at the template. Remember, the idea behind this page is that it should present 3 doors and the user should be able to select one of the 3. So the template is a fairly standard HTML file. The key aspect here is that it defines a form. So the form, remember, forms are being used in HTML to request user input from the data input from the user that we can then send back to the server. So our form element contains 3 inputs, 3 input tags, 1 for each door, which you can see here. And I chose the input type radio so that the user can only select 1 out of the 3 doors. Then I also have a final input tag, which is of type submit, and this will be rendered as the submit button. The last important part of the when defining a form is to define the action and the method. The action defines a URL where the form data should be sent to once the user presses the submit button, and the method defines the which HTTP request method should be used. So this is typically either get, post, or put. But the default is to use a post method when sending form data. So now let's see how this works. I go back to my original page. Nothing has changed here. But now when I click on Launch Game, you can see that our form has been rendered nicely. And as a user, I can click between the 3 doors. I can only select 1 out of the 3 doors because I chose this radio type button. Now when I click Submit, what happens? I end up on the Reselect URL. Remember, this is the URL that I also defined here in the form action. But I receive a not found error, not surprisingly, because I haven't implemented the Reselect resource on Flask yet. Also, when you look on the bottom here in the server window, we can see that we received a post request on the Reselect resource. This is what we expected because this is what we defined our form to do, to send a post request to the Reselect resource. And then the server answered with a 404, which means that this page is not available because we haven't implemented it yet. So this is our next task then. So here comes our next implementation. So the 2 routes, the root route and the select route, are exactly the same. But now I define one new route, namely the reselect route. the reselect route should listen to post requests. That's why I also specify, so the route decorator can also take the methods argument to specify for which type of HTTP requests Flask should listen to. By default, a route automatically listens for GET requests, but in this case, we expect a POST request. That's why I specified here. So then the question becomes, how can I get the door that the user has selected back into my Flask code? And the trick is to use the request attribute. So the request attribute is an attribute that you can load in from Flask. So you type in from Flask import request. And that attribute has a dictionary called form. So when you call request.form, you get all the form attributes, you get all the form data that was sent with the post request. So how do we know which key values we have in this dictionary? For that, we need to go back to our form. And if you inspect the code, you can see that when we defined our radio buttons, we chose the name door. We specified a name, and that name was door. Any input element with a name will be available in that in this request form dictionary. And which values will this door dictionary key, which value will we get in this form element here? Well, the values are also specified in the radio buttons. It will be either 1, 2, and 3, as you can see in the HTML code on the right. So for this reason, I know that it's either going to be 1, 2, or 3 as a string, so I can convert it into an integer and save it in the selected door variable. Okay, so in summary, this line here takes the form data, extracts which door the user has selected, converts it into an integer, and converts it into an integer. Yes, I can post the HTML. I can post the entire solution later. Right, so once we have the selected door, then we can render our new, the next step. What will the next step be? The next step will be to give the user the option to change your mind or keep the original door. But for now, we will keep it very simple, which is why I call it the Reselect template. So this is essentially to select again. But for now, we will keep it very simple. So I render the template called reselect3.html, and I also parameterize this template with the selected door. Let's look at the template. At the moment, it's very simple. I simply have a header where we write out the selected door that the user has chosen. We can use this now to test that our logic actually works with passing in the data from one page to the next. So let's start the game again. I launch the game. I select door. I select, let's say, door number 3. And we are now on the Reselect page, and we see the message, you have selected door 3. So this is great. We managed to pass data from one page to the next page using using a form and a post request. Of course, this has to become more complex now. So what we need to do now is to then the next step in the game is that the moderator opens one door. And then the user is being given the choice to either stick to the original door or to change his mind. So the first task with the moderator opening a door, for that, in order to moderate, so which doors can the moderator open? The moderator should, of course, not open the door that the participant has chosen. So that one should be excluded. The moderator should also not open the door where the car is behind. So that one also needs to be excluded. But how can we avoid that the moderator opens the door where the car is behind? Well, we need to introduce a game state where we decide at the very beginning of the game behind which door the car actually is. So I introduced this new global or module-wide variable called game states. And the idea, this is a dictionary, and the idea behind this variable is that every game will now get a unique game ID, and we will use this game ID to remember behind which door the winning car is. And with that information, the moderator will be able to open a door that doesn't have a car behind. So now I need to update my original routes a little bit. In the select route, where we start a new game, we will now generate a unique game ID. I use the UUID module to do that. That essentially is a Python module for generating unique identifiers. Then I also use the random module to randomly select a number between 1 and 3. And that essentially will be the door behind which is the car. And then all I do is I update my game states variable. Remember, this is a module-wide variable that will be available for all games. And for that specific game, I store the winning ID. So the game states is simply a mapping from game ID to the winning door. Okay, so now I render the template, the original select door template. But this time I also pass in the game ID into the template. And so now the question that we need, what I need to explain to you now is how can we pass this game ID through all pages during the game. So in order to achieve that, I modified the form a little bit where the user selects the door. Namely, I added a so-called URL parameter. A URL parameter is a parameter that is part of the original URL. And it's defined, the syntax is the following. If you have the original URL, in this case /reselect, you can add a question mark and then the variable name and then the variable value. So this is the standard syntax for passing parameters from through URLs. Okay, so now with this, when the user presses the submit button, we send data using the form with the form data, but we also pass the game ID using through the URL directly. An alternative way is that we could have added another input element here, a text input element, where we store the game ID. And you can hide that input element. This is also standard practice, but it's not in this example here. I wanted to show you another way of passing arguments using URL parameters. So then now let's go to our reselect page. So this is the page where the user can choose a new door. So the selected door I can get again using the request.form attribute. But now I can also get the game ID using the request.args attribute. So the request.args attribute contains all URL parameters. And because we've passed in the game ID as a URL parameter, I can extract it here. So now with the game ID, I can use my game states to extract also the winning door. So now I have the door that the user has selected, and I know which is the winning door. So with these two informations, I can work out which door the operator should open. The way I do that is that I start with a set of 1, 2, 3. Then I discard the winning door because we certainly don't want to open the winning door. Then I also discard the selected door because I don't want to open the door that the user has selected. And then from the remaining doors, from the remaining choices, I randomly make a choice. And that will be the door that the operator will open. So with this information in place, I can now render my Reselect template. I pass in the game ID. I pass in the door that the user has selected, and I pass in the door that the moderator has opened. Let's look at the template. I have one header where I print the selected door. Then I have one message where I tell which door the moderator has opened. And of course, behind the door, nothing is. Behind this door, there's nothing. And then finally, I have one more form. I have another form with input elements. And these input elements will now provide the user the chance to change the original selected door. Let's try this out. So I launch the game. I select one of the 3 doors, let's say door number 2. And let's see what we have. You have selected door number 2. The TV moderator decided to open door number 3, and there's nothing behind it. And now we can either change our mind or not. So the only thing that are interesting here is that I cannot select door 3 because that's already opened. And the way I achieve that is by adding these if statements in the form in my template. So if the door is the open door, then I set the disabled element in the input, which means that as a user, I cannot click on that door anymore. Yeah, and that's it. And so the other thing that I wanted to point out is that here on the URL on the top, you can see the URL parameter. You can see that I pass in the game ID. And then here you can see this long unique identifier that identifies that specific game that we are playing. Okay, and so this of course is another form. And when we look at the action definition of that form, we can see that we send the form data to the final/final resource. We again use an URL parameter to pass over the game ID, and we use the post method. So the last step in our game development will be to implement this final method. Let's look at the final implementation. This is a very simple, relatively simple resource. So all what we need to do is to extract the selected door from the form. And now this is the door that has been selected for the second time. So this is the final selection from the player. Then we can use our request.args argument to extract the game ID. And with the game ID, we can also extract the winning ID. And now we can simply figure out if the player has won or not by comparing the selected door with the winning door. And this flag will then be passed in our final.html template. So if you look at the final HTML template, it simply checks if we have won, in which case we print a congratulation message, and otherwise we print out a loser message. So that's essentially the game itself. But of course, what we would like to do is to, well, before we do that, let's try it out and see if it actually works. So we launched the game. I picked door number 2. Moderator opened door number 3. So then I picked door number 1. And in this case I've won, and I can start the game again. So that's great. But of course, now the exciting part, what we really wanted to do is to create some statistics on which strategy works better. So the next step in our implementation will be that I create this statistics resource, which I added up here. So essentially, this statistics resource collects all the, looks through all the games that have been played and checks if the player has changed his mind or not, and then presents your winning chances for the 2 different strategies. The implementation is fairly straightforward. The only thing that I needed to do is to extend this, this game states a little bit. Instead of just at the, before, the game states only stored the winning door, and I had to extend that so that it stores the winning door, but also stores information if the player has changed his mind or not, if the player had won the game, and so on. So the game states becomes a bit more extensive. But otherwise, the implementation is fairly straightforward. Okay. And then finally, the final step for a full game is, of course, to make it a bit more visually pleasing. So now we have the logic in place and with all the functionality that we want. But if you look at that page, it looks quite ugly, right? So the last step is to add some code to make this to make the game more visually pleasing. So how do you do that? The first thing that I did is to use some use some style sheets. So this is an extension to HTML called CSS, an addition to HTML called CSS, where you can style your different component in HTML. And in particular, I use a default style called Bootstrap, which makes it very easy to build relatively nice looking websites. So you can see this, I made some, I created a navigation bar here. This is fairly, I created a so-called a layout. So this layout will be applied to all the different pages in my application. So all my applications will now use this Bootstrap style, and they all will also have this navigation bar. And the other thing that I did is that I added some images instead of just having these ugly select buttons. I added some images of doors and of a car and a goat if you lose. So with this, let's look at this final version now. So when I launch the game, now let's make this full screen. So now when you launch the game, you can see on the top we have our nice navigation bar. We have some animate like door images that we can select from. Let's select door number 3. Okay, so the moderator opened door number 1, behind which there was a goat. So then I choose door number 1, and I've won a car. That's fantastic. And then you can also click here on the bottom right. You can click on the statistics link. And there you can see the statistics for all the games that have been played. So in my case, I only played a single game. So it was only a chance, like 100% success rate for changing your mind and then winning. But of course, the interesting part now is if you play multiple of these games. Yeah, which we will do in a second. But before we do that, are there any questions? No questions? Okay, so then I've actually posted this. I made this website or this game available online, and I will share the URL with you. So if you go to this page, you will be able to play the game. Let's see, it takes some time to load. Okay, so what I would like to ask you is play this game a few times, and I will look at the statistics page here to see which strategy works best. I can see you're already playing nicely. I will also play one round. Okay, keep playing a bit. Where's the privacy policy for data collection? Can you specify a little bit? Okay, let's look at these statistics that we have here. So let's see how big the chances are for winning when we change our mind. So we had a 39/57 chance, which is a 68% chance of winning if you change your mind. And then am I doing this correctly? 30, so changed in 1. Right. So in the cases where you changed your mind, you won in 68% of the cases. And when you did not change your mind, you only won in about 20% of your cases. And this is actually fairly accurate to the ground truth. So if we go to the Monty Hall game Wikipedia page, you can see the solution here. So if you change your mind, so if you don't change your mind, you have a 1/3 of a chance to win, simply because there are 3 doors, and you pick one. Picking the right one out of 3 is a 33% chance of winning. But if you change your mind, you actually have a 2/3 chance of winning, which is 66%, which is fairly close to the 68% that we achieved here. Okay, I think this was everything I wanted to cover today, except if you have any additional questions. I wasn't quite sure if this privacy policy for data collection, if this is an either you have to clarify what you mean with this question here in order for me to answer it, be able to answer it. You can also unmute your microphone and actually talk to me if you would like to. No questions? Well, if there's no questions, then I hope you enjoyed this lecture. And I hope it was fun. Next week, Min will teach you a little bit about how to move from kind of these simple scripts that we've been developing to a more how to deploy these systems into the real world and how to move more into a production system. So this will also be exciting. There was one question about the assignment. Of course, you can ask. Do you need multiple specs for multiple things in the HTML? So Sander, you're asking, this is an assignment specific question. Yes, you will need multiple specs. So the specs contain the data that you would like to render using Altair. And if you want to display two different data sets, then you also need two different specs. But I suggest for assignment specific questions, please use the campus wire or use the group sessions. Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for joining today and speak to you next week. Bye-bye.